Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Colada and welcome back to a video. Now today, I'm going to give you my thoughts on Playtime Chapter 5. Now, I didn't lie about this. I did say to myself that I wasn't going to go insane with Chapter 5. Like, I would do a video a day. I lied about that. I did the same thing which I did with Chapter 4, where I recorded 3 videos and edited 3 videos in the same day. I did it again with Chapter 5. But this time, I didn't get a migraine, this time, weirdly enough. But I'm kind of glad that I did play through each one. Because what I did is I played through the entire chapter, cut it off at certain areas. So I had 3 videos ready to be edited. Unlike last time, where I did, I recorded, edited, edited, and it got really tedious and took too long to do. Now, this time, it didn't take as long. That's one thing I just want to get away of. I did lie about saying that, so I am sorry to myself, I guess, but who knows. Now, let's actually talk about Chapter 5. Now, I'm going to talk about the characters first, and I'm really disappointed with the characters. Yes, the design is actually really good. I love Gilbert's design a lot. I like Chum's design, even though he's out of garden. It looks like he's out of garden and Bam Bam. It looks pretty cool. I think the prototype design is really cool as well. I thought Lily's design was a bit off, but also could be worse. There's some really cool designs, but however, there was some stuff about the characters which makes the game really bad. I'm talking about Chum and Gilbert for starters. I don't like those 2 characters, even though I'd said that Gilbert is one of my favourite characters in Chapter 5, and he still is. But I have such a big problem with him. And Chum, because Chum had 5 minutes of screen time, and he's gone. He put you in. He put you in his mouth, to hide you from the prototype, and then you don't see him again. Same with Gilbert, but you see him again at the end of Chapter 5, and I don't like that a lot. I really like how those characters who could really have a big impact in Chapter 5. Just disappearing and don't appear again or near enough at the end of the game. Another thing I do want to talk about the characters is the new stuff that they made, the Wrong Side Out stuff. I hate them so much. There's a reason why, is because they are so useless. They mean nothing to Chapter 5 whatsoever. They're just collectibles. That's it, just collectibles. And they even had a commercial at the start of the game, and nothing. They did nothing other than just add collectibles, and that's literally it. I mean, in Playtime Chapter 1, you had Poppy, which had a big impact. Not really in the first chapter, but she had a big impact with the whole franchise. Chapter 2 had Mummy Longlegs, which is, the main person in Chapter 2. Chapter 3, we had the Smiling Critters, which had a big impact not only in Chapter 3, but throughout Playtime from Chapter 5. In Chapter 4, we had Dory, which again had a big impact with Chapter 4. And now we had the Wrong Side Out stuff, which didn't do anything. I feel like they could have a commercial with Gilbert instead, or Chum, or Lily even, or even the prototype, as a Jack in the Box instead. Like, they could have done those 4 characters instead, and then, get rid of the Wrong Side Out stuff. They could just be, random little add-ons like the Smiling Critters or something like that, They are useless. And that's what I hate about it. Another thing I hate about the characters is Lily as well. I don't like Lily simply because she's very similar to Mummy Longlegs, and I do not like Mummy Longlegs because of how the way she acts and speaks in Chapter 2. It's kind of sexual. That could be more of a me thing, but that's how I see it. No offense to Ellie's Lovelock, I'm pretty sure that's her name, who did the voice acting of Mummy Longlegs. Really good job, I will admit. I love the voice actor a lot, but I just don't like how it's, how she acts very similar to Mummy Longlegs, The prototype, I thought the prototype was actually pretty cool. I know we all thought the prototype was going to be like this toy mixed with other toys, and it wasn't. It was a Jack in the Box, which I actually really liked. I know a lot of people don't like his design, but I personally really do. And I love in one of the, I think it's the engine chase scene, how he mimics, people talking, like how he mimics Dory, or Mummy Longlegs, I love that a lot, and it's really cool because, you know, it gives you that, you know, idea that he's always watching you no matter what. He knows where you are. At the same time, he doesn't kill you. I'll get to that later when I talk about the ending. So overall, with the characters, I do not like them. They basically ruin the game for me, in my personal opinion, because they just appear randomly, and I feel like we see too much of each other character. Like the prototype, you know, an amazing character that we see, you know, and how he appeared near enough at the end of the game was a perfect, you know, finally seeing him what he looks like is perfect. But again, like characters like Chum and Gilbert mean nothing. You know, Huggy Wuggy's back, and I thought that was really cool. I like how he acts, and I will talk about, you know, his scene with Kissy Missy later. Moving on to the gameplay, I actually really like the gameplay a lot. Don't get me wrong, the puzzles were quite interesting and a bit difficult, but I like the puzzles really enough. I think the reason why I like the puzzles, even though they are very difficult and hard to do, is because once you do them, you get that level of satisfaction, like you achieve something, even though you gotta do more puzzles. And I feel like for a lot of people, they don't really see that. It's because from the start of the game until the bit where, you know, you play as Huggy Wuggy, that section there is very boring. And I understand why people may think that, but in my personal opinion, I didn't find it boring. Because I don't really find video games boring. I don't really see that in a lot of video games, in my personal opinion. I thought it was really cool. It was challenging and hard, which I don't like, but I don't think it was boring. Speaking of the Huggy Wuggy bit, where you play as Huggy Wuggy, I love that so much. Probably one of my favourite things about Chapter 5. It is so cool how you play as Huggy Wuggy, going through, you know, the brainwashing stuff, which I'll get to a bit later, but I really like that a lot. I thought it was really cool, really creative. I just love it so much, and I feel like they could even make a game about it, you know, like make a game about like you play as a toy during the hour of joy, something like that, you know, make it like a spin-off game or something like that. I thought they could do that because, you know, you play as Huggy Wuggy and it looked really well. Yes, I will admit his hands do act a little weird in my personal opinion. Like, you know, it's very similar. I think it is basically the exact same as the grab pack. The reach is not as far, if that makes sense. But I feel like that could be massively improved in my personal opinion. But they did a good job on it, and I really like that a lot. Another thing I do want to talk about is obviously, you know, the next bit, going to the area before you go to Lily. I thought that area was quite cool, I will admit. It feels really fake, and it kind of reminds me of that one mission in Minecraft Story Mode. I think it was like in episode 3 or 4, where like you go into the end to meet that ginger beard guy. I can't remember his name top of my head, and you go through to the end and it's like this fake place. It reminds me of that very well, and I don't understand why people were complaining about the color scheme not fitting the style for your playtime. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. You could argue about the same thing in Chapter 3, in, you know, the school area, or before you meet Dog Day even. I don't understand that whatsoever about the color scheme. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I don't know if I'm missing something there, but I really like that. The boss battle stuff and the chase scenes, I will get to that later as well. Kind of similar to the gameplay, but the ending, I wasn't a fan of the ending in my personal opinion, because it left you off on, I'd say, probably the biggest cliffhanger we've gotten ever, in my personal opinion. Because obviously the Doctor's back, which is a shock. I didn't even know that he was coming back or making a return. I thought he was just there, you know. When I first saw him, when we reacted to Wrong Side Out, I thought he was just there. I didn't actually know that he would, you know, be returning, obviously. I find it interesting, though. You know, I do find it really interesting with the ending. I'm a bit confused with the ending as well, with the prototype stabbing you, because you get thrown into like this vat of like this pink yellow goo stuff. I don't really know what it is. I still don't know. And then you wake up in the same place where you get stabbed, and I don't know if you got stabbed or not, or you got thrown in that vat or something, because it adds on questions like, are we a toy? Or are we a human? Because I feel like, right, what they could do with that bit scene is that obviously that we're injured, we got stabbed in the chest or the stomach, right? And obviously in the game, in the older games like Chapter 1 and 2, our hands don't really move that well. They kind of do like a little shaky thing when you're moving, like kind of like this. And then obviously in Chapter, 3 and 4, they're going to have that movement like this as you walk around. And also in Chapter 4, you have that little tremble thing when you stand still, your hands tremble. And I feel like at the end of Chapter 5, they could have this bit where, like, as you walk in, you could, like, limp a bit like this, so that your hands, go down, like you're massively limping and you're really injured, because obviously you've got stabbed in the stomach and chest. Same thing with Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy as well, but they didn't get back up, but we did, and it just makes no sense to me, in my personal opinion. Like, that whole bit right there, I'm really confused on that. Maybe I have to watch a video to, expand on my knowledge about that, but I don't really know. It's a bit weird. I think it's best we talk about the chase scenes next. I counted 7 if you count the prototype one, because I guess you are kind of running away from the prototype, I guess, in a train. So, in my personal opinion with that, with the 7 chase scenes, I actually don't really mind it. I know a lot of people are quite frustrated with it because, there are 3 chase scenes in the prologue. I generally do not mind the chase scenes, and the reason why I don't mind the chase scenes a lot is because they do such a great job on building high tension and suspense, and no other Playtime game has really done that apart from Chapter 3. And obviously that's just a game ago, well, 2 games ago, but still, in Chapter 4, I never really felt that high tension or suspense, I didn't feel like something was going to pop out of nowhere. I kind of could, predict when something's going to happen, And in this game, I don't know when stuff is going to happen, which I really like a lot. I don't know if Huggy Wuggy is going to appear, or the prototype will appear, or, I don't know, like Gilbert or Chum might appear. I don't know when stuff will appear, and that does a great job in building that high, tension and suspense, because you just don't know when stuff's going to happen, because we've seen so many chase scenes. It does that, job on building suspense. So, when we don't have a chase scene for a while, and we hear that the noises, we're like, okay, I gotta be careful, and I gotta be ready, and be in the mood and the mode to realise that it's gonna be another chase scene. Nothing happens. And that suspense does such a great job because we see so many chase scenes. That's why I don't think the chase scenes are really that bad. I can kind of understand why people may not like them, but you gotta realise that the majority of them, I think there's like 5 or 4 with Huggy Wuggy, and I like how there are so many with Huggy Wuggy. It does such a great job because obviously Huggy Wuggy is obviously the first villain we encounter, and with all the chase scenes, he basically, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, he is the first character we encounter, and obviously the first time we run away from him, so it makes sense that we run away from him again in Chapter 5, if that makes sense. That's why there's so many chase scenes with him. So I don't necessarily think that the chase scenes are bad, but I understand why others may think that they are bad. May I just also add on, this is kind of like more of a me thing, Chapter 5 ran so well on my new PC. Like, it ran so well. When I was recording, I was getting 130 to 200 FPS, which is insane, because I didn't know if it would even run, And it did. It actually did, and I'm so happy that it ran, because there was no scenes where I thought I was lagging, or there was any buggy bits. Like, the game ran so smooth, And I'm so happy about that. I loved it so much. I also want to talk about the soundtracks in Chapter 5. This time, we didn't really have any sad soundtracks. Because I know in Chapter 3 and 4, there were some quite sad soundtracks, I will admit, that do toll with your emotions. That could be more of a me thing, but I liked how soundtracks really told your emotions in Chapter 3 and 4. And in Chapter 5, we really didn't have any sad soundtracks other than Poppy's humming, when she's humming her own theme song, actually. So, that was the only sad bit that I clocked onto. The rest were just kind of high tension build up songs that build up suspense, and it makes sense why, because we have so many boss battles, we've seen so many chase scenes. It makes sense why majority of the soundtracks are high tension soundtracks instead. Speaking of the boss battles, really there's only two. Obviously Lily and the Prototype, if you would count Huggy Wuggies. But then again, you can kind of just run away. Actually, you have that one section where you forget like the 3 batteries, so I guess that's kind of a boss battle area. It looks very similar to Yarnaby's, which I thought was quite cool, but they are kind of reusing that whole asset, and I didn't really mind that, to be fair. I didn't really mind that. Lily's boss battle, there's kind of two, I'd say. The first one obviously using the UV light, which I thought was really cool. I love the UV light a lot in Chapter 5, and I really hope it happens in Chapter 6. But you use the UV light to do that whole chase bit, and, I like that a lot, to be fair. That first bit was quite cool. The next bit was obviously a chase scene, which I didn't really like because I didn't know where to go half the time. It was kind of similar to Dog Days chase scene, I'd say, where I didn't really know where to go, and very similar to Mummy Longlegs as well. So yeah, and the Prototype one, I thought it was quite cool that we could, shock the Prototype, explode him, and then explode him again. Then somehow he's alive. I don't know how, but he just is. But I really like that a lot. I do want to talk about the scene with Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy. That scene right there was so beautiful and so wholesome. Probably one of the most wholesome moments in the whole of Playtime. I loved it so much because it's so sweet. Because when I watched it, I was like, oh my god, this is so adorable. And then, when the Prototype, stabs Huggy Wuggy in the chest, I was like, this to this. And I hate and love that scene so much because it kind of stops you from being scared and worried, Until it's like, oh my god, okay, we can relax with a really nice wholesome moment. And then you're straight back into the high tension scenes again with the Prototype, And I just didn't like that, because Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy got hurt, that's the only reason. But it kind of also shows you Huggy Wuggy's vulnerable side, Because throughout the chase scenes, if you really look at it well, Huggy Wuggy's exhausted and extremely hurt, and you can even see it when Kissy Missy, touches Huggy's hand, well, arm basically. He flinches away in pain, You see Huggy Wuggy how tired and exhausted he is because, he's probably been running and, out of stamina stuff, because you do see him actually out of breath, actually. And you do see him scared as well, which is really cool and really interesting that we scare the toys, believe it or not, which I thought was really interesting. So that whole scene right there kind of shows you that the toys aren't evil, they're just broken mentally. And I did talk about that in my theory video, go check that out, I love it so much. But yeah, I really like that a lot because it just builds, on that whole emotion ride, you feeling vulnerable, actually, yourself feeling vulnerable and kind of at ease, and then, seconds later, you're straight back to being stressed and sad. I'm going to complain here about the hands, the 2 new hands. I thought they were quite cool, the pressure building one and like the element hand. I did like them, however, they don't really fit the whole theme with your Playtime. I don't know why. They just don't really make sense to me, in my personal opinion. And there was this one bit which I really got annoyed about, and it's the whole scene with, Huggy Wuggy taking your grab pack. I thought it was quite cool that we finally don't have a grab pack, for the first time since the beginning of Chapter 1. And I hate that we didn't have a grab pack, for a little while. And the reason why I hate it so much is because we go through all of this, pain and suffering to get the Omni hand, we beat Yarnaby, we confronted the Doctor, we beat the Doctor, we finally retrieved the Omni hand, and people thought, okay, this Omni hand is really cool, it's going to be really powerful, and it's going to be very strong in the next chapter. It goes. It doesn't even be used. It is useless. And I do not like that whatsoever. And it's the same with like the flare gun and, you know, like the jumping hand, purple hand, you know. I don't like how they go, even though both of them don't really fit the theme for Poly Playtime. I feel like, you know, the main ones, you know, the red, the blue and green one makes sense, but the rest don't. But I can understand why they, you know, add the hand, you know, to make it more special, you know. But I don't like how we lose the Onmi hand. It's really annoying because we go through all this pain and suffering to get it, and then we lose it in the next chapter in the first like 5 minutes. I do not like that. It's really annoying. Obviously, with this one, the lore was really interesting. I know I kind of wasted a lot of time by me showing off like the cassette tapes, you know, or the VHS tapes and stuff like that. I am sorry about that. I was really invested in the cassette tapes because they kind of tell you quite a lot about Poly Playtime's lore, you know. And obviously, you know, with this one, we learn about how the toys go under brainwashing. Obviously, they use Miss Grace's videos to, you know, brainwash the toys into thinking that they are a toy, not a human anymore. And I really like that, you know, having that lore, because we learn something new, and it's so, you know, meaningful and so deep, and actually really sad as well. And I like that a lot. And the Easter eggs, I only encounter like one Easter egg, and that is the wrong side out thing when you bring Lemon to his other family. I did not know about that. Alright? I just wanted to bring back Lemon to his family. That's literally the only reason. And the fact is that it played wrong side out, which I did not know about, was actually so cool. I loved that so much, because after I finished uploading the first video, you know, recording the video, editing the video, I was in bed. It was like 11 PM. I wanted to go to sleep so I'd be ready in the morning to record the rest of the Poly Playtime videos, right? So I was basically ready, right? When I was on TikTok and I saw a video that CG5 posted that Markiplier found the Easter egg and listened to Wrong Side Out. And I was like, oh my god. So people found it before I did, you know? It was so cool. I love that so much, you know? I didn't actually know about it. I just wanted to bring Lemon back to his family. And there was also another Easter egg where you could see like a tiny version of Pianosaurus, which is a nice touch, I would admit. Now I'm going to talk about how the game made me feel. Now, the game wasn't as strong on the emotion, unlike Chapter 4 and 3, especially 3. But this one, you know, it kind of added, you know, that sad feeling again, you know. I would admit, I was quite sad during Poly Playtime Chapter 5. I went through a lot of emotions. I was happy, I was confused, I was a little bit angry in some areas, I was really sad in some areas as well, I was really invested as well. Because in this time, they only have like one death scene as well. Obviously, in other chapters, they have, you know, the first one, they had none because obviously Huggy Wuggy's alive. In the second one, they had 2. Kind of, I guess 2. Yeah, I mean, like, if you count Mummy Longlegs, you know, obviously she died. And then obviously with Pugapilla, I mean, he is dead. I say we escaped him, but I think he is dead. I think the prototype killed him off. Or Catnap did, I don't really know. But obviously, the main one that we do see is 1. In Chapter 3, you know, you could argue 2 or 3, 2 being Catnap and Mr. Light, 3 if you count Dog Day, because obviously we don't know if he's still alive or not. People are saying that he is dead, others saying that he isn't dead. I don't know. I think the wiki doesn't know if he's dead or not. It's kind of unknown. And in Chapter 4, we had, I'm pretty sure, well, you could argue like 20 if you count all the toys in Safe Haven. But obviously the main ones, there's I think 3 or 4. And in Chapter 5, we had only 1, which is obviously Lily. I don't know if, you know, Kissy, Missy, or Huggy Wuggy are alive. They might be. They could be alive. Who knows? But obviously, actually no, because in Chapter 4, the Doctor is back, so that's one less one. But you know what I mean, basically. So it is quite interesting in my personal opinion. But yeah, I went through a lot of feelings, some good feelings, some bad feelings. I just told your emotion. Like I said, probably Playtime does a great job on talking with your emotions. I'm gonna talk about how other people thought about the game. I think a great example of this is Markiplier's review. He doesn't like Chapter 5, and I understand why. If he thought some areas are boring or carried out way too long, I do understand why he may think that. But in my personal opinion, I don't necessarily think that Chapter 5 is a negative, It did say that, we don't know a lot and it's the 5th game. And you could argue the same with Final Fantasy 30's, the 5th game being sister location and you don't really know a lot. You only start learning quite a bit when the books came out. And, Ultimate Custom Night and Pizza Sim came out. That's when you start, learning the lore a lot more and we got a lot more information. I feel like because of Chapter 5, we know quite a lot, We knew about, we finally know about the brainwashing tactics. We know about, the prototype being, related to Elliot Ludwig. We know that, experiment stuff. We know about the toys. We know what really happens in the experiment stuff. We know about the orphans. We know about the Hour of Joy. I feel like we know basically near enough everything, but not everything yet. Because there is some stuff that still remains a mystery, I will admit. Like, Dog Days' whereabouts. But, you know what I mean? Like, the lore, I feel like we know quite a lot already, and it is the 5th chapter, but I feel like Chapter 5 isn't really that bad, I feel like people may think of it as a bad chapter, but it did really well. In the first week, I'm pretty sure it sold over 250,000 sales. And I think it's like up there as one of the most successful player play times of all time in the first week, which is insane. A lot of people loved player playtime Chapter 5, it got millions of views by other YouTubers, gameplay trailers, got millions of views. Wrong Side Out, a song that CG5 made. And also, speaking about CG5, congratulations to him hitting 10 million subscribers, being the first nerdcore singer to ever hit 10 million. Congrats to that guy, he deserves it. And I also said that, if there was one YouTuber that wanted to get a record, I wanted him to reach 10 million. So congrats to him. He obviously deserves it really well. But back to Chapter 5. I think, the sales for Chapter 5 and the promotion was so good. It was really good. And they did promise quite a lot of things. So that's why I generally think Chapter 5 was really successful. I kind of understand why some people may think the game is boring in some areas, or that the characters, aren't really that best, like Lily, for example, and I do agree on that factor. But, it's a good game nonetheless. So, overall, in my personal opinion, if I have to give Chapter 5 a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give it 7.8 out of 10. There were some flaws with Chapter 5, I will admit, leaving us on a big cliffhanger and not closing the book on some areas that we're still a bit confused on, I think that the counters, they randomly appear and they don't appear again. It's kind of random. Again, I did say that it does build on that suspense. At the same time, I feel like it can be quite lazy. Like, we could see Chum again at some point, Like, maybe when he's helping Gilbert or something, when, Gilbert reaches Poppy, So, I feel like the characters are weak. I will say that. The character design are really good, I will admit. The characters, play out in Chapter 5 were quite weak, in my personal opinion. The on your hand, obviously, leaving you is not the best. I think the hands are quite cool, but again, don't really fit the theme of player playtime. The gameplay is really good. The chase scenes are pretty good. I understand why people may not like them. Again, it does a great job of building that suspense. So, overall, I think player playtime Chapter 5 is really good. Now, if I have to put it in a list with all the player playtimes, I think it goes Chapter 2, 1, 5, 4, and 3. I feel like 3 and, Chapter 4 and 5 could, you know, be switched depending on my mood. But, you know, if you're thinking accountability of chapter 4 mechanics, I think chapter 4, you know, as a whole is better. But chapter 5 is still really good, I will admit. And that's all I have to say about Playtime chapter 5. Like I said, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad game. I'm not also saying it's one of the best Playtimes that we have had. It is really good. Now, with chapter 6, I really hope they do spend their time on it, because if it is going to be the last chapter, I want it to be a banger. You know, that's why I want Playtime chapter 6 to come out mid or late 2027 or early 2028. You know, I want them to spend their time on this. If not, if it comes out in, like, you know, February or March, then I feel like we can kind of predict that there's going to be a 7th chapter, because obviously they did say something along the lines of you know, like chapter 1 and 2 is Act 2, chapter 3 and 4 is Act 2, and chapter 5 and then 6 is going to be Act 3. I really hope that they do make other Playtimes, because I don't think I'm ready to let go of the games, because I really like them a lot, as you can see from behind me. But I really hope that there are other chapters. I can understand why people may argue that, you know, chapter 6 should be the last one, and I do agree. At the same time, I wouldn't be mad if there's a 7th chapter or an 8th chapter or even a 9th one or even a 10th one, you know? I wouldn't mind. Hello everyone, Mr. Colada here. Now, there was one thing I forgot to mention about Playtime Chapter 5 when doing my thoughts video, and that was the cutscenes. Now, the cutscenes are actually really creepy and really brutal. If that is the cutscenes with Lily or the prototype, you know, crushing Poppy's face, because I actually didn't realise that she lost an eye, Poppy did, which is actually really insane, you know, how the prototype basically crushed her head in. So, yeah, the scenes are quite brutal and really menacing and kind of creepy, you know, if that is, you know, Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy getting stabbed and cut by the prototype, or the prototype, you know, just destroying Poppy's face. Like, the prototype was very destructive, let's just say that. But that's why, you know, I forgot to say that the scenes were really brutal and really menacing and creepy, but they did it on a really good way, like a really good level, and that's all I have to say. Anyways, that is all I have to say about Chapter 5. Again, it's a good game. Sales was amazing. I generally think that this game is a positive. If you don't, you know, think it is, then that's fine. That's your opinion. But in my personal opinion, I think it's really good. Now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, then consider subscribing and help us out a massive ton. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.